became Kurama in a way. He learned to be patient, to be strategic, to seek the guidance of others when it came to making important decisions. He learned to lead. He basically
Let me just make the reference from early. This is The Three Kings, The Tragedy of Wasted Potential. That's the title of the video. And the content creator is Somewhere Past Never. And he does a pretty good breakdown of the tragedy of wasted potential, which, I can agree with a lot of his takes. But I'm going to point out some things that I think are, like, we'll go address some of the things that I think he's a little bit off base with. We'll get to it. Trust me, it's coming.
cherry-picked all the best parts of who Kurama was, and it made him all the better. Not to mention, Kurama actually came back when he was summoned. Sure, it was a tense situation, but Kurama didn't run away from it even though he knew what he'd done to Yomi. Lastly, it tells us that while he has chosen to be Shuichi from this point forward, he doesn't intend to forget the things that made him Kurama. I really wish we'd gotten to see this play out a bit more organically over a longer episode count because I very much enjoy the framework of Kurama and Yomi's shared arc. In the aftermath of Kurama's match, Koenma and Botan find themselves a bit concerned. Kurama's in pretty rough shape and most of his energy has been expended, giving them little faith he can come out on top in his next match.
Pay attention to that, what he just said. Pay attention to that, which he just said. That part right there, that part. Pay attention to what he said about Kurama. We'll go circle back to it in a minute.
This forces them to wonder what happens if he loses, and then what could potentially happen if Yusuke and Hiei fail to win as well. From their perspective, their best chance at peace between the realms is for one of our boys to claim the crown. The next fight is Hiei vs Makuro, which is certainly among the very few battles that is actually always great to watch, not necessarily combat-wise, but narratively. Hokushin gets bonked by Yusuke for remarking that Hiei vs Makuro works out in their favor since they're both formidable opponents. Yusuke reprimands him for this comment, explaining that it makes them look weak. In Yusuke's words,
"Maybe we do need help, but no one needs to know."
Like his words before the main tournament, Yusuke is very much aware of the possibility he won't walk away with the dub, but he's not going to let that stop him from giving it his all. And his pride won't allow for Hokushin to voice their luck about two powerful opponents squaring off being in their best interest. The lack of true life or death stakes for him and his friends do afford him the luxury of being much more casual about their situation though. As Hiei's fight with Makuro commences, she asks him if his opinion of death remains the same, to which Hiei confirms that there's nothing left for him in this life. Makuro doesn't believe his claim, and we begin diving into her backstory some more. With a handful of episodes left in the series, we're just now getting more insight into Makuro. While it is the equivalent of an 11th hour exposition dump, it works well enough for this to get a pass. It's just another issue that could have been remedied with a longer episode count and perhaps some anime-exclusive scenes to flesh things out.
Yeah.
When Makuro was still a child, she was sold into slavery and she relays that her first memories are of the shackles that can still be seen binding her. Eventually she ran away from her captors, but unfortunately, despite her newfound freedom, she couldn't seem to free herself from her shackles. The shackles that remained on her became symbolic of the way she was being held captive by the darkness of her past. The scars of captivity had been seared into not just her flesh, but her spirit. This sense of spiritual imprisonment, despite her physical freedom, sowed the seeds of a deep hatred that eventually manifested in the form of violence as a warrior. This burning hatred only grew over time, earning her a ruthless reputation while also allowing her to grow strong enough to rival the other two kings. Hiei interrupts Makuro to get the fight started, asking her if she's so unhappy why not put herself out of her misery. Makuro's agility keeps her out of Hiei's reach, but she also doesn't counterattack just yet. Then we get a bit more insight from Hiei, who explains that for his entire life, he never got to experience the joy of being loved, and that he even had to endure being hated and abandoned by his own people. He goes on to say that's why he felt she understood him, because they both tried to purge their pain through violence before following the statement with,
"After all, we're both only capable of expressing ourselves through our violence."
Makuro begins to fight back but is still pulling her punches. She even passes on an opportunity to strike Hiei when she catches him slipping. Hiei can't wrap his head around why someone with as savage of a reputation as her would change her tactics so drastically simply because she's fighting him. Hiei sees it as an insult, but it's clear to the audience that Makuro didn't mean for it to be that way. There's a very real connection that is formed between the two, mostly off-screen, but a connection nonetheless. But like Hiei said earlier, they're only capable of expressing themselves through their violence, so if Makuro's got something to say, she's going to have to do the talking with her fists. Makuro accepts Hiei's bid to get her to fight more seriously, and the first definitive strike of the match goes to her. I love the artwork for this moment because in my mind, that's what instant regret looks like. After tearing off his shirt that wasn't even really all that messed up, Hiei immediately retaliates with the Lizard of the Shadow Fire. Makuro mentions the irony of Hiei being born a fire demon despite coming from a village of ice
Dragon of the
spirits.
Darkness
Hiei
Flame?
explains that it's his curse and burden to bear, being born with powers in direct opposition to that of his people, with flames made for consuming everyone and everything in his path with his hate.
Hold it!
Makuro calls bullshit and says that if it was hatred that drove him, he'd have destroyed the ice village when he found it.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
Makuro then hits Hiei with a bit of truth that has been baked into his character from the beginning, but only really peeked out every now and then.
It's not hatred, it's longing. You just want to belong to something.
Hiei just keeps throwing hands, but is again called out by Makuro, who questions whether or not he's the one half-assing the fight, mirroring Hiei's attitude from earlier. Makuro draws attention to Hiei's Jigan Eye, wanting him to use it to finally find what it is he was always truly looking for, lifting the veil for the audience even further. Hiei isn't one to talk about his true motives, he just does what he needs to do from the shadows, so it isn't impossible to believe that there is a hidden reason, a more emotionally and deeply lonely reason, he wanted the demonic implant. Part of finding his place of birth was likely in the hopes that he'd be accepted by his people. With that in mind, imagine how crushing it must have felt to be rejected by them a second time. Then pair that with the search for Yukina, finding the only person connected to his home that was wholly willing to accept him, being so close but unable to tell her who he was. The price he ultimately paid to get the very thing that allowed him to find his family was preventing him from claiming that connection he yearned for. It's kind of heartbreaking when you look back on all of his interactions with Yukina, and then when you consider how many times he was rejected, first by the ice apparitions and then by the bandits that raised him, it's no wonder he put up a wall that kept him from getting close to anyone.
God damn it. I thought this was going to... Oh my god. I might as well just split this video because there's no way. So, I'm going to make an effort to... Yeah, let me just use this break as an opportunity to say what it is that I'm going to address, right? So, he mentioned something about Kurama in terms of him being in bad shape after the fight he had with Shigure, right? But then compare it to what he says about Makuro, who is he's referencing the flashbacks. All of this is the flashbacks of Hiei and Makuro's past collectively, right? In the midst of their fight. So all of this is taking place during Makuro and Hiei's fight. I want us to pay attention to that because there's something that is going to be referenced that I'm going to go and do a retroactive step to something he said about Kurama versus Shigure as to why the statement that he's going to make is erroneous. So we're going to get to that.
Back to the fight, we can see that Makuro can cut directly through the third dimension, which I don't even want to begin to try to understand how that works. Supposedly, anything that comes into contact with these tears in reality will also be split, but not really. At most, they seem like a mild inconvenience because we see Hiei collide with two of them and he's mostly fine afterward. Makuro proceeds to weave a net around Hiei, and Kurama worries that if Hiei doesn't do something soon, he'll be torn to shreds. However, we literally just saw how ineffective these spatial tears seem to be, and we also know that there's a lot more subtext to this fight than it.
Okay. It was not ineffectual. Makuro is faster than Hiei. So, if he makes a wrong move, or if he moves a little bit too fast and doesn't stop himself in time, she can literally split him in half just by doing that. So he can't just rush in like an idiot. She can control space and territory by tearing, dimensions in front of him. So she can separate you in one dimension over here and the other part of you goes over there. It's that simple. If you can tear through the fabric of reality and you can do it at the snap of your finger and you're faster than Hiei, that might be a problem. That might be a problem. That might be, a little bit preventative. You probably don't want to rush over there to your death. Right? It is a significant threat. Enough. It doesn't seem like much, but it's like a pawn push on the chessboard. Oh yeah, it don't look like much. Not like a lot. So as I was saying, that's preventative. Right? A pawn push seems very insignificant. Yeah, try and put your knight where it's not supposed to be. And see what happens. Whoops. The knight disappear. How? You remember that pawn push? You ignored it. That's kind of what this is. Okay? That's kind of what this is. So, okay. That's the first flaw I'm going to point out in his reasoning. In this fight in particular. But we're moving on. Give me a minute.
Isn't all about the two killing each other. Even if it was, look how big these gaps are in this alleged net. Hiei can absolutely get out of there with as fast as he's
Oh my god. These trucks are killing me. Yeah. Yeah, remember what he's saying there? The gaps. The gaps that he's referring to. If she can summon that at the speed of light, is it wise for him to like rush regardless of how much space there is in between those? No. It doesn't make any sense. She can literally toy with reality in front of you. It's probably not a good idea to rush over there. You know, so again, please ignore this part of the reasoning, because this part don't make no sense.
proven himself to be, not to mention he's the size of a toddler. 65% of his height is his ego, 34% is his hair, and the remaining 1% is his actual body.
Lol. Now I get what you're saying. Like this could be funny, but you know, lol. Again, no, don't get me wrong. With better execution, this would have actually been. This is actually funny, you know. But because of how nonchalant is being said, the joke doesn't land the way it's supposed to. Yes, there's a pie chart there. There's a 65, a 34, and a 1%. Right? 1% of his height is his actual body, which, no, it's not. I mean, mathematically, that's wrong. His hair is a lot less than he is. What the hell? I don't even want to begin to make sense of this goddamn chart. Because his body should be 34, his hair should be 1. Mathematically, that is just incorrect. Like, it's just for the sake of hyperbole. Honestly, it's an exaggeration for the sake of nothing. Right? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm getting notifications, so forgive me. Alright. So let's keep it moving. Alright? I didn't want this video to be this long. I was hoping it wouldn't be, but maybe I'll have to break it into 3 parts, because this is the 3 kings. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, ready? We're ready? Let's go. Here's the problem. I probably have to mute one of my browsers. Give me a minute. Alright, where was I? Let's go! Ixo! Or is that how it said? I don't know. Pardon my poor Japanese, pardon me.
Hiei opens his Jigan Eye and unravels his bandages to launch a full power Dragon of the Darkness Flame. Makuro braces against the dragon but is soon carried off into the air. There's a bit of a struggle from both sides, but Makuro ultimately ends up splitting the dragon in half with a wave of energy that travels along the length of the attack and smashes into Hiei. Makuro tells Hiei that until now he wasn't strong enough to consciously control the dragon, saying that up until then all he could do was feed on the intention of his soul. Hiei concedes to Makuro, and she tells him not to say that his only reason for living now was to one day defeat her, remarking that she couldn't bear it. However, Hiei tells her that she's missed his point, at which time the shackles that had bound her for basically her entire life begin to crack.
Now you can leave your hatred in the past where it belongs.
That's deep. I like that. And why that's dope is because maybe that was his intention the whole goddamn time. Which, that's what's dope about Hiei's character. Like, I'm not going to tell you what he's about. And that's the thing with him. Like, him don't wear him heart on him sleeve, but it's there. And Kurama has spoken about that at length the first time we met him during the 4 Saint Beasts. Yeah? Kurama's like, yo, don't listen to what Hiei say. Watch what him do. Yeah? Watch what him do. Because he'll act like him don't care about you. But then he'll spend all of his day killing everybody that tries to harm you. Make that make sense. You get me? So this is thematically correct. Yeah? This lines up with his trajectory as a character. It's consistent. So let's go further though.
While Makuro was trying to force Hiei to admit that what he's really just been searching for this entire time was a family and place he belongs, as well as acknowledge the fact that there was still so much for him to live for, Hiei was simultaneously working to free her from her shackles both physically and mentally. It's easy to assume that Hiei did so because he saw so much of himself and how he used to be in Makuro. Despite his prickly exterior, Hiei has come a long way in terms of his relationships as well as the things he finds valuable. So spending all that time with and then facing Makuro must have been akin to being forced to look in the mirror and do some self-reflection. Hiei knew the only way to truly move forward and find the things he sought was to let go of the sorrow of the past, and he needed Makuro to understand that too. This is emphasized by the statement he makes before the episode ends.
There are things in the future that are worth living for,
True.
both for you and for me.
At the start of the next episode, we see that Makuro has squared up with Natsumi, the chick Chu was simping over and ultimately conceded to. From what we in the audience can tell, Natsumi seems to be giving Makuro a run for her money. Initially, and to some degree, I still think Makuro struggling to gain the upper hand on Natsumi is ridiculous, but I'll tell
That right there is how you know this guy has never played a fighting game in his life, or that he's never been in a martial arts tournament in his life. That's how you know. Have you never played survival mode? I will take you back to Tekken 3. When you beat any character and if your health was this in the beginning and it drops to about here, in the next fight it comes back to just about here, but it never goes back to 100% HP. This is not arcade mode. This is survival mode. Remember what was said about Kurama. Kurama was in bad shape after he fought Shigure. Makuro just fended off the Dragon of the Darkness Flame, something that would have killed any other opponent. Most opponents literally struggle to deal with that. Not only did she fend off the Dragon of the Darkness Flame, she split it in half and beat Hiei. Right? And Hiei wasn't even trying to kill her. He was focusing on one particular spot, her shackles. So imagine if he was trying to kill her. Imagine how much more energy she would have to expend. Okay, fine. So maybe that's a defense of the argument. But then, here's where you end up proverbially dying on the hill, or falling on the sword as it were. Here's the problem with this logic. Look at real life fighting. If I fight Rampage Jackson, and then in the next 2 or 3 hours, the next fight I have is with, let's say my next fight is Daniel Cormier. And then after fighting him, I have to fight John Jones after that. Imagine that. We're going to go back to what I said before, right? Let's go back to what he said about Kurama.
Kurama's in pretty rough shape and most of his energy has been expended, giving them little faith he can come out on top in his...
Remember that. Now let's go back to what he says here.
He sought was to let go of the sorrow of the past, and he needed Makuro to understand that.
Hold on.
With very few clues, which is what makes this matchup feel absurd. To my issues with Ryzen's friends overall here in just a bit.
Hold on.
Despite his prickly exterior, Hiei has come a long way in terms of his relationships as well as the things he finds.
I swear, I was trying to find it. I was really trying to find the perfect spot. It's not working out for me. It's not working out. I thought I had it.
He sought was to let go of the sorrow of the past, and he needed Makuro.
You know what? Hold on. Give me a minute.
Next episode, we see that Makuro has squared up with Natsumi, the chick Chu was simping over and ultimately conceded to. From what we in the audience can tell, Natsumi seems to be giving Makuro a run for her money. Initially, and to some degree, I still think Makuro struggling to gain the upper hand on Natsumi is ridiculous, but I'll touch on this when I go back into my issues with Ryzen's friends overall here in just a bit. Regardless of my gripes to come, I do like the idea that Makuro has actually gotten weaker after Hiei freed her from the shackles of her past.
So, what's the problem then? That completely, like, okay, so you understand but you don't? Like this, dog, this mixed signal thing, you know, is why relationships don't work. You can't on one hand say you find it ridiculous, right? You find it ridiculous that Natsumi is giving her a run for her money. Yeah? Like, think about it. Let's say Naruto just have a fight with Obito. And after that rough fight, where him still have to expend a whole heap of energy just to beat Obito, then after that him have to fight Rock Lee. You think him gonna be at full capacity? No. No. And it goes back to what I was saying. Even in real life, if I fight GSP today and then even let's say I have 24 hours rest between fights. I have 24 hours to get ready to fight Kamaru Usman, and then after fighting Kamaru, I have to now go fight Leon Edwards after that. You see how it gets considerably less fun each time? You think it matters how much weaker they are than a S-class? If you fight a S-class of your capacity, and remember, you know, that's a clash between titans. For real. Right? And you win. How much energy you think you're going to have left for the other people that are maybe not as powerful, but still enough to give you can't fall asleep in front of them. Yeah? You can't treat this like a Tesla drive. So that's what I wanted to point out, right? I just wanted to point that out. That the most ridiculous thing is you finding this ridiculous considering the reality of the situation. The reality is, even in fighting games, after you fight somebody in survival mode, your health bar goes down, it comes back up a little bit because you get a break, but it doesn't go back all the way. So if you understand what's the complaint, make it make sense. You know, make it make sense, man. Make it make sense. Make it make sense, man. I swear. That's it.